All right, today's video, I want to be going into my ideas around creating memorable NPCs or non-player characters for your D&D campaigns. This is mostly going to be for dungeon masters or for people who want to be a dungeon master. Maybe you're planning on running a one-shot or whatever it is. And to me, I think it is important to have one or two non-player characters or NPCs that your characters can latch onto. And there are a couple different things that I think go into creating memorable characters. So the first thing is appearance. So if you're good with words, and you can come up with a nice description or use either some sort of AI tool like ChatGPT. I also know there are some services, I believe Descript, like DYSCRIPT. I think that's one. I'm sure if you search Descript, however you want to spell it, D&D tool or something, that'll pop up. But these would both be ways for you to be able to verbally describe your character. I am not good at that. I am not good at making up or writing descriptions of how I think people should look or be or whatever. So I tend to lean into the AI tools for creativity and for at least like some sort of base starting point. And prompting is a whole nother thing, so I won't necessarily get into that. However, if you haven't really used one of these chat tools before, OpenAI has their ChatGPT. There is also Claude AI, which is by Anthropic. Bing has, or Google, well, Microsoft Bing has their own. Google has their own as well. But if you've never used the tools, I would suggest using them to help with your creativity. So normally what I would do is say I want this character to be an elf. I would just say, hey, can you give me 10 descriptions of what this elf character who is a shopkeeper would look like and sound like. And then ChatGPT or whatever one you're using will kind of spit out 10 different things. So the appearance, visually what people are seeing, and then I would include like what they sound like to give you ideas over the next thing, which is the voice of the character. So I prefer doing voices for characters. To me, it makes the distinction between when I am being a dungeon master and when I am being a character. To me, having those voices makes it really easy for myself and hopefully my players to understand, like, this is the character that I'm talking about or talking to or through. And then when I use my normal voice, then this is the information that you guys are catching, or what questions do you have, or whatever or not. There are some other options though, if you don't like doing unique sounds or like a unique voice for the characters. And the two things that I had thought about are a unique cadence in terms of how a person speaks. So I will just try to do an example real quick. Say you have a shopkeeper and the party comes in, and you'll do something like, "Hello, travelers. What brings you today to my shop? It's nice to meet you." Or something like that, where you have kind of an interesting way to break up kind of this talking voice, like I'm talking to the camera right now. When you're talking to your players and stuff like that, having a unique cadence to how the character speaks. And this could be something that you make up or you could steal. Kind of an example of a cadence, but it's also like a character voice, like Yoda, how he's always speaking in a question kind of thing. That's like kind of another example of you wouldn't necessarily need to change your voice, but speaking in a different cadence you are would so stupid. But yeah, if you're speaking in a different cadence, it will also help break up some of that. Another thing that I like to use, or that I use sometimes, are mannerisms or gestures. This is a little bit like the cadence. I have one character who I'll kind of go over down the line here, who, when I talk through him or talk as him, I am doing this steeple thing with my hands and kind of constantly touching my fingers together. And this is a way for my characters to know, or my players to know, hey, I'm talking as Sargos right now, kind of thing. So the appearance and voice, those are two, I think, of the main things that will help your players understand or kind of remember who these characters are. And a nice thing with the voices and the cadence is, if this is something that you plan, or if this is a character you plan on using for a long or extended period of time, it's very easy for your characters to remember, oh yeah, Sargos is the one who's always speaking like this. So that character can kind of get ingrained in their memory as something that, or a person that they need to kind of think about, or, kind of creating this memorable character. One last thing along the appearance lines: if you don't like writing out your own stuff, or me, if you think you're an artist but are really bad at drawing, the tools for AI to make pictures, Midjourney, and right now ChatGPT, if you have the paid version, you can also use Bing. I forget what one it is, but you can use these image generation software tools to give you a nice starting point to, or idea of kind of what you want your character to be, or what you want this NPC to look like visually. So sometimes people prefer theater of the mind, describing things, and everyone gets to picture what it's like inside their own head. However, sometimes it's also nice if you want everyone to be on the same page of like, oh, this is an old gnome woman who looks majestic or mystic, casting spells and stuff like that. That can also be a good way to kind of get the appearance of the character. Although I will say the appearance is probably the lowest on the totem pole compared to the voice. I think if you have a very unique voice and a unique cadence to your character, which I'll go over some examples that I have here from campaigns that I've played in and ran, but I think the voice of the character is something that is extremely unique, and that is something that if it's way different than what the players are normally expecting, it creates a very memorable character. All right, so the second kind of part of making a memorable character, there are two ways in my mind that characters become memorable. So a lot of the times you will have a throwaway character, like someone that you're just making up on the spot because the players are like, oh, I want to talk to like the nearest person to me. And you're like, oh, yeah, that's James. And they walk up to James and they start asking him questions and stuff like that. A lot of the times the memorable characters will be something like that, where those characters are people that you don't necessarily have any idea pre-planned for. So the voice or the appearance at least is something that you won't really be able to plan for unless you have like a list of things or a list of characteristics or whatever that you're kind of pulling from, which is one way to do it. But all of that being said is having an event happen around that character. So, for example, in a campaign that I am a part of, there was a goblin whose name was Dirt. And his name was Dirt because it was the first thing that the DM thought of, as this character was part of the goblin slums within the city. And what ended up happening is our party kind of like accidentally murdered him. And then because of that murder, our DM kind of used it as a callback, or kind of bringing them back into the story after they had passed. Not really in a meaningful way, like there isn't anything super important of it, but it can be funny if you're the DM and you have something that happens like this. For Dirt, for example, so Dirt is murdered and our characters are like, oh, we need to get out of here, something's crazy, so we sneak out of the area, and then someone finds Dirt dead. And then it turned into the goblins the next day having a protest over, figuring out who killed Dirt and wanting justice for Dirt and stuff like that, and then putting up, like fake posters around the city that, that say like long live Dirt, or something along those lines. Another kind of interesting way to have an event that's kind of memorable around other things that you plan for. An example of this where you're planning an event around something is I had a player who really didn't like the subclass that they were going down. He started out as a rogue, and then he wanted to get into the Bard college. So at the time, I think they were level 6, and he was like 5 levels in Rogue and 1 level in Bard. And he came to me and was like, hey, I'm really not enjoying how this character's playing. I'd like to play it a little different. I would like to be 5, a level 5 Bard, level 1 Rogue. So kind of switching the allocation of levels. So to me, when I first started DMing, this was really annoying, or not annoying. Annoying's a bad word. I was really reluctant to be okay with players switching things kind of mid-campaign. And I would have an issue if it was like every campaign, or excuse me, every session, the player would come up to me and be like, hey, I really want to play a warlock. And then next session it's like, hey, I really don't like the warlock. I want to play bard. Then the next session, hey, I really don't like a bard. I want to play a ranger. To me, that I don't think I would be okay with. But when it's something like this, where it's like kind of a one-time thing, I had another player who wanted to switch their subclass. So they were a druid, they were a shepherd's druid, and they wanted to switch over to be a moon druid. And doing stuff like that, I think once is okay for me. So what I did was I was like, okay, in the next town, there'll be this bard teacher that you have to meet. And with him, you will train for a week. And then during that week, the other players will be able to do other things. And then you can be your new class or whatever. So I made it part of the session. And for this, I had to create like this bard teacher character. And so this bard teacher, who I named Flandagus Floop, something like that. And he talked like this, and it was very weird. But that character was memorable because I was able to tie it into the story where he was training one of the other players quickly during the session. And we did kind of like a, what do they call it? The Dragon Ball Z, the hyperbolic chamber, or hyperbaric chamber. I forget what one it is. One of those words. Like when Goku's training. So that was the thing where it was like an elapsed time where he went through this portal that this teacher created, and inside the portal it was like months. And then when he came out, it had only been a week or something like that. So that's kind of one way of making an event around something that happens or is going to happen. Making a character around the event that happens. The other way that I think is probably the most potent in terms of getting or having a memorable character is just creating a character that has some sort of purpose. And what I mean by that is Sargos, for example. He is the head, or he's one of the kind of like sergeants of the police force for the world. And my players, report to him as kind of like the boss. So Sargos is there to help guide the characters to what they need to do, as well as he's there for, questions or to be able to provide lore answers and whatnot. Excuse me. The other character that I had, I literally called him Guide Man, or Guideman is what everyone called him. But he was a character who was part of kind of like the Hunter x Hunter anime kind of trial campaign that I ran briefly. And the thing with him was he was there as a very weak character. So Sargos is more powerful currently than the players are, and kind of demonstrated that through some of the actions and whatnot. Guideman was weaker than the characters, and he kind of like was relying on the characters for protection, and because the characters gave him protection, then Guideman was there to kind of help them figure out the different parts of how the trial was going to happen. And then kind of creating, a story around Guideman. And this was all just kind of improv, and the characters are asking, or the players are asking, who are you? And, what are you doing? Why are you here? And, then it's like, oh, well, I'm here just, this is the last time that I've been here because I've gone through this thing like 8 times, but this is the last one, and I'm just trying to do this because I want to prove to myself, but I really just kind of want to get back to my home or my farm on the prairie where, my wife is waiting, kind of thing. And then, even though that's kind of improv, if you can allude back to oh yeah, oh, my wife would really like it here right now with this and that. It's like another way to kind of get your characters a little more invested in kind of like these memorable characters. So if you have a purpose around those characters, is either like a quest giver, or maybe you kind of have like a low magic world and you want your characters to be able to, if they find magic items or scrolls or whatever, to bring them to say a wizard, to have that wizard figure out and be able to relay the arcane information to your players. Yeah. The one thing that I would say to just keep your mind on is the power of the NPC. So there are ways to make strong NPCs, but not really have them kind of take over the show. I think a bad way to run a memorable non-player character is if you are, say your players are, I don't know, going to slay a dragon, and then you have this NPC that you want to be memorable, and so he's very strong and you bring him along with, and then then that NPC is the one to slay the dragon. To me, I think that's kind of a bad way to make a memorable character. But I do think that there is a way to introduce a character like that or an NPC like that to your players. But I think that's probably going to have to be another video. I feel like I've been rambling for a long time. But I got a comment, I believe it was from an Andrea or Andreas, and it kind of set this light off for making memorable non-player characters. So I hope that you can kind of take something away from this. I think for me, I would probably lean towards making the NPC less powerful than your characters are, and have him be kind of like a Tagalon sort of person. But I do think that there are ways for you to have like for me, it's Sargos, who's a higher level than my players at the moment, and have him be kind of like this guiding force. But Sargos is never coming along with them on the missions that they go on, but he's always there to help them and hopefully push them kind of towards the direction that he thinks they should be going, or what he expects as a sergeant in this, arcane police force, what he would expect people to do, or people under him to do. So yeah, I think that's gonna be it. I hope, like I said before, I hope you got something out of this, and I hope maybe this plants some ideas towards how you can make your own kind of fun and memorable non-player characters in Dungeons and Dragons, or in any other kind of tabletop role-playing game. I feel like you could use this across any sort of role-playing game. So yeah, that'll be the video for today. Tomorrow I am probably going to do another Dungeons and Dragons video at the request of Andreas. So thank you for your question, Andreas. I will definitely address that in kind of doing these side quests, and how to make those kind of more fun and entertaining from my point of view. So yeah, I'll see you tomorrow, and have a good day. Bye.